Hi, everyone. My name is Dame DC Cordova, and I want to welcome you to one of our hangouts. You know how much we love starting out on these things. In the new year, we love hangouts and end of year. Again, thank you so much for supporting us always with all of our web expert needs. And today we're very, very excited as you know, Money and You has been around for about 35 years. The Accelerated Business School for Entrepreneurs was the program before Money and You. And way back in the days when we were thinking about leverage, there was a wonderful gentleman who was a dentist that was around us that had attended the program and had been so impacted by Money and You, the business school, and also a week later we had a 6-day program with Buckminster Fuller. And so Dr. Jeff Alexander really took on many of the principles, and he decided that he wanted to teach this work and began to train with Marshall and myself and then some of the other leaders that were around. And he learned the principles so very well. So today I have invited him because he is a health professional. And later he went on to do some other work, but he still is a dentist for children. And there are quite a few distinctions that he has gotten from our programs and also from the many years of applying the principles that can be really be helpful to you. So, Jeff, are you there?
I am here. Thank you for having me on board.
Thank you so much. Jeff, can you give us a little bit of your background, a little bit more than what I have shared, and then I have some questions for you.
Sure, absolutely. In 1977, I graduated UCLA Dental School. My specialty was kids. I knew I wanted to make a difference for children, and went, like a lot of doctors, went out into the market for the first time and realized that I knew nothing about business. So after 8 years of college, I kind of hit the wall, got a little depressed. Fortunately, the CPA that I had at the time read this article about this accelerated business school. He said, Jeff, this is for you. This is something that sounds like exactly is something you can take it and run with it. I read it. I was absolutely touched to the core. So I flew down in May of 1981 after having my company for about 1 year. And I attended the first Money and You of May of 1981. It absolutely shifted everything. Not only was I touched to the core, but I got a chance to get an experience with Bucky Fuller and the principles that he was able to cipher down from the spiritual world into the world that I was living in. I always saw that I was a spiritual person. I just did not know how to make that segue from that world into business. Bucky and the Money and You gave me the signpost that I could follow to make sense out of it. Then I was fortunate enough, DC granted me permission to take the business school, the Accelerated Business School, which was 1 month later. So I went from Money and You right into the Accelerated Business School. It was 4 weeks at that time. Again, a very powerful experience. Bucky Fuller was there, was one of the instructors. I was blown away by two things, not just the message, but how it was taught. The acceleration of it just made total sense. As a health professional, I totally understand how the brain works, and I finally found something that catapulted me forward. Then, as you know, 1 week right after the business school, we stayed on for another week, and Bucky was with us every single day. That was called The Future of Business, where hundreds of very successful entrepreneurs from all over the world came. And I was fortunate enough to hang out with Bucky and Marshall and DC and a lot of the top leaders and spend quality time with Bucky at that week. When I came back, I was ready to go. And I immediately realized not what was wrong with my company, but what needed to be corrected about my company. The results, just to give you the benefit, I'm going to fast forward really quick and then I'll turn it over to you, DC. Before I went to the Money and You and Accelerated Business School and I had experience with Bucky, we were rather successful. It was one dentist, me, and 9 to 10 other staff people. We did our first year about $450,000 in income, which is not bad for your first year right out of school.
Wow, amazing.
Within 3 years, all right, put your seatbelt on, within 3 years of incorporating the principles, with the learning experiences, with all of the things that maybe we will talk about today and some of the stories we'll share with you, we went from 1 dental office, 1 doctor, 9 staff, $450,000 a year, to 7 dental offices in Northern and Southern California. a staff of 60, 9 full-time doctors, and we grossed $5 million, which put us in the 1% profile of all practicing children's dentists in the country. And that completely was due to what I got out of that experience in that program. The best part about it was that I was leveraged enough to be able to know what my passion was, which was to take what I learned and share it with the world. And then that's where DC and I got together and said, okay, let's create some avenues and some pathways to do this. Was one of the first that helped Marshall replace himself with the JEDI program, where we trained other people. And we also taught parts of the Money U for the first time, and became an instructor at the business school a year later, which was my role was to help integrate these principles where the rubber meets the road in actual businesses. And then we went off and taught a course called Management with Ease to make management easy, and if it wasn't for DC, people all over the country would have not heard about that. So that's fast forwarding a little bit.
Thank you so much. So there are quite a few principles in Money and You. This is being watched around the world. As you know, our network, we have over 100,000 graduates around the world, quite a few of them that speak only Chinese, but they have translation systems. Right. And we also have new people that are very interested in the Money and You program, yeah, and in the Business School for Entrepreneurs. So can you share with us what are some of the key principles, like something that people can use tomorrow? Maybe, I know that there are many things, but can you just maybe boil it down to just a few? But can you start with one of the first things that you put into work that anyone can possibly do in their organizations today?
Yeah, one of the very first things I did, good question, DC. One of the very first things I did when I got out of this whole experience, I was on fire. I was inspired. I finally had a North Star to focus, which Bucky provided that, and also what I learned in the school. I took 3 days to myself before I went back into my company. I went off into the woods, and I literally wrote down on a piece of paper on the left-hand side what previously would have been wrong with my company. Now, after I realized there was a whole new way of looking at this, is that you learn through mistakes, and they actually are learning experiences. I put down learnings rather than what was wrong, and I listed about 20 things. On the right-hand side, I drew a line from whatever the condition was that needed to be fixed to what principle that would apply to. For example, I had one time, I had the front office fighting with the back office. The left side of the ship was trying to sink the right side of the ship. And so I created situations where we could go to cooperation rather than competition. We created games. In fact, one of the games I think they still play today in the Money and You, which is the blame game. You know, the power of words as tools. So I actually took from the left-hand side and I drew, okay, here's the learning. How are we going to correct this? How are we going to enhance this? And I drew it to whatever principle would apply to that. And then from that point on, the next thing I did is I made sure that I was able to integrate that with my key people. I'll tell you the very first thing I did when I got back, I got 5 of my key managers and sent them to Money and You.
Okay.
Now that's an example that actually was on the left side. How do I integrate this experience with my key people? Well, more with less. You've heard of that one? I figured there's already an organization doing this. I could provide a maximum results with minimal effort on my part by just sending my key people there. And so within the next 6 or 7 months, I paid for and flew my key people so they were aligned with the vision. And I got to tell you, it turned it overnight in the direction I wanted to go.
Now,
so, yeah.
Go ahead and look into the camera, my love.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, thank you. I know you're looking at me, and it's totally okay because you are not a Google Hangout person. You're not somebody that's constantly doing this. This is I think this is your first one, so we're very excited to have you, and we want everybody to be able to see those beautiful eyes.
All righty.
So right now, what you're doing is you're going through some of the principles of Buckminster Fuller, the teachings of Buckminster Fuller. So for those people that have never heard of Bucky, can you give us the 1 minute introduction to Buckminster Fuller, and then maybe some of the principles that you're going over, and then you can share what it is that you did.
Okay, wonderful. Bucky, the first I heard about Bucky, but I never got a chance to really understand what the man did. I always knew that it was about geodesic domes. He did a lot of wonderful inventions. He had something like I don't know how many patents. I believe it was like 58 or something like that patents. And all I heard was the physical things that he did to help the environment. When I got a chance to meet Bucky, the spiritual part of the man really touched me to the core. I got a chance to see what he did with the adversity in his own life and how he siphoned that down into actual principles that I could use as a signpost that I could follow that made sense, that I could use as a language to my own people. For example, one of the things I did on that left-hand side of the paper was I said, okay, how do we get the company to know what integrity is about? What could we use to introduce that? Another principle was change the environment, not the people. By fixing and changing, improving the environment of my own company, the physical environment, as well as the relationships, the people's behavior would start to shift. Where I had always known it in the past, you work on the people, and that was getting nowhere. So we changed the environment, and the people, they absolutely would blossom into the new environment. The next thing was cooperation versus competition. That I learned that from Bucky, and I realized that just made sense. To compete with each other made no sense. And so by changing the environment, we produced systems where we literally cross-train people. Here I was, you know, in an office with a lot of separate departments. So we moved people around. We had them develop an appreciation for each other. They trained each other. I made my managers responsible to empower themselves, make themselves duplicated, and we rewarded the people not based on what they produced for cash. We rewarded the people based on the service, the feedback we got from our patients. The other thing Bucky talked about is words are tools. Wow, this was a big one for me. I don't know about you. Most people don't get up in the morning and say, I can't wait to go to the dentist. So that being said, we changed how we talked. We changed how we communicated. I literally wrote a book called Influencing Patients Without Manipulation. What this is how are we going to use words as tools to shift how we're going to communicate, starting with the kids. We don't see in our office, we don't give shots. We give magic juice that puts the tooth to sleep. You see, we talk differently. We don't pull teeth. Not ever do we pull teeth. They take permanent vacations. And you know what happened? It gets to be fun. And fun is something that most children's dental offices don't exhibit. Another core principle is find a need and fill it, causing no harm to the environment, and do so by adding value. I'll tell you something, DC. When Bucky was telling his story at the Future of Business, and he used the term, he was a throwaway when he was younger. He called himself a throwaway. He had to start over again. That was the second time I heard that term. I started to cry. I was so emotionally impacted. Why? Because the first time I heard that term is when I entered the profession, and they called children who are in the Medicaid welfare situation in healthcare throwaways. And that's when I realized I saw the need. I had an opportunity to fill it. No one was attending to that need. Yeah. And so the first thing I did when I came back, I contacted the Medicaid offices, and I realized that the only dental practice that was treating these welfare kids who don't know the difference between the politics of healthcare and pain, I called them and I asked, what other offices are taking care of these children? They said the closest office is 480 miles from where you are. I made a decision right then and there that we were going to fill that need. We're going to do it in a manner that's going to add value, make it fun, and put everything we had behind that. Now, one of the keys to leverage, which is more with less, another principle that Bucky talked about, is putting minimal effort in, producing a maximum result, is the key to leverage, which is the key to allow me to have 7 dental offices and hang out with you teaching other programs. Yes. And what that was is, number one, you've got to have the clients. You've got to have the patients. We called our patients guests. Again, words are tools. Guest was a broader sense. It was a more general approach than the specialized calling them a patient. So what we did by seeing the Medicaid population that was government funded, we went from a patient base of 5 to 10 patients a day to 80 patients a day. We went from scheduling patients for 2 weeks out to 3 months out. So we had the resources coming in. It was a matter of then doing the next piece, which Bucky talked about, synergy. I always felt that way more powerful than my little mind is to get everybody in our company cooperating together, here's that word again, cooperating together to come up with the learning that we had to produce a solution. So we would close down a half hour every week and create synergy groups. And the people would come up with ideas of how we can add value to the patients, how we can take the learning experiences and turn them into positive corrections. So these are just many of the things that we looked at, and along the way I explained to my people what precessional effect was, the law of precession. And the law of precession, I used the analogy that Bucky used, which is the bee. You get a bee is going
tell us first.
Yes, go ahead.
No, there are people that have never heard the word precession.
Okay.
And so just if you know the explanation, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
If not, I can share it, but let's just...
Well, you said a beautiful job. In fact, when I was UCLA, I love the way that you shared it, especially with the ripple effect. I explained it to my people because my people in my company didn't know what the word precession meant either. So I explained it by the examples in nature that Bucky talked about, which is if you drop a pebble in a pond and the ripples from that pebble go out 90 degrees from that pond, it is the action that comes that sometimes doesn't look like it could be predictable that comes. A bee, for example, goes after nectar. That's the course of action. Yet, along the way, does something very powerful, and it cross-pollinates, which is, again, very important. So the precessional effect is that action that ripples out due to the original action that you take. But I love what you said, too. So please, piggyback on that. I love how you explained it.
Oh, no, and for me, it's really the physics term. The term itself, precession, means the effect of bodies in motion on other bodies in motion. Right. And basically, the way that Buckminster Fuller used to explain it, the simplified way, is that there you have, we are rotating around the sun, right. And the reason we don't fall into the sun is because of that particular force that gets created at 90 degrees from the sun spinning. Right. And then, of course, then we're spinning, and therefore the moon cannot fall into us because of precession. And the great thing about Buckminster Fuller was that he used to teach us generalized principles. And because he was so brilliant, I mean, yes. We used to need interpreters sometimes, like the first time I heard him with Werner Erhard when I was 27 years old. Yeah. You needed someone to kind of translate for him because he was so advanced. So the Money and You program, in many ways, helps people to experientially learn these principles, and then we help the translation of it by real-life experiences like the one that you're speaking about. But one of the greatest benefits for Money and You, and having done this for 35 years now, is that for many people, our friend Eric Lofholm, ericlofholm.com, and one of the sales masters out there, it's like, one of the things that we share is that the shift that happened for him and many others, including myself, yeah. is that once you get that your life is about being focused on adding value, and that automatically will create different precessional effects than on someone that is just committed to money only, or to just committed to possibly reaching whatever goals they want, without caring about people, the environment, or anything like that. So the precessional effects that you create in your life are very, very much the mirror that will tell you in which direction you are heading, whether you're heading in the right direction or in a direction that may not be the best for you. And we can talk about precession. We talked once for precession for like about 5 days in one of our advanced instructors training program. And one of the things that we're going to be doing with Jeff is that we're going to be bringing in this whole series of very advanced teachings on each principle and how to apply it into business. And we're going to be announcing that later. But this is where Jeff and I have a lot of synergy, and we're also going to be bringing our partner, Domingo Silva, some scape artists. We're going to be bringing Eric Lofholm. We're going to be bringing Dr. Sherry Clark that wrote her whole thesis on the 12 freedom steps to freedom that were, really created by Buckminster Fuller, and then our business school instructor on Buckminster Fuller, Randy Kraft. So we're going to be bringing these different masters, and when we do this series, it's completely with the purpose for you to begin to understand these generalized principles and how they translate to real results in life. And this is what you're listening to right now. You're listening to a man that did a program, if I may call you, you were just a simple dentist, weren't you?
Yeah, oh yeah, not a happy one either.
That's right. So you were just a guy that had gone to dental school, you were doing pretty well, but then you learned these principles, and it took your business, it took you personally, your life through the roof. Yeah. So this is why we are introducing you not only to Jeff, but also to how to understand better these principles, because many people, even those that attend Money and You, and we're going to create a Facebook page where you'll be able to interact with other people that are putting this to work in their businesses, in their organizations, in their professions, so that you can begin to meet some of these like-minded individuals, which not only will make you happier, and it will make you happier because you will have people that will help you, but also it will begin to highly improve your bottom line.
Yes.
Because once you start living the principles, you will see that there's such a guiding force. So can you say some more about that, Jeff? Because
yes,
you have a lot of experience.
Well, the key that that you just said is the adding value. We talked about processional effect, and the key is to adding value. Going back to integrity is everything, which I learned from Bucky. That became the North Star of my company. And how do you measure integrity? So we would literally close down 45 minutes every week and talk about what we learned that week, and do so in a way, because words are tools, that never made anybody wrong. I mean, we literally would write down how we're going to add value from what we learned. And what we use, I call it the heart guidance system. I like what C.S. Lewis says, is that basically integrity, to explain it to my company, is that it's doing the right thing, especially when nobody's looking. And they got that. They understood that. And how you know that is the feeling tone of your heart. So we called it in our company the emotional guidance system, the heart guidance system. That to follow that, you're adding value. And if the processional effect, like you say, comes back to you, and it feels contractive in manner, it doesn't feel right in manner, then we would put that, there's nothing wrong with that, it's feedback, it's more learning. And that would be then on the agenda for the next meeting to say, what did we learn from that? Why are we getting that kind of feedback? Why does it feel that way? Oh, I noticed that the bottom line dropped this week. To cultivate a culture of people who want to add value, I had to find people, not all of them stayed, but eventually they came, that were interested not just in the fruit, but in the service of watering the tree to get the fruit. And when you get people who love just watering the tree, there's plenty of fruit to go around, which is what Bucky was talking about. There's enough for everyone to make a world work for everyone, and to do so now by falling forward, not backward. Make sense?
Total sense. Good. So can we talk a little bit about money? Because I know that is a question in people's minds all over the world. And when you say to someone, when they don't have an understanding of these principles, and you say to someone, don't worry about it, it's like if you just add value, you just keep doing the right thing, that money will come. For us that have done that over and over and over again, I remember when I had my only financial learning experience in 97, 98, when the big financial crisis happened in Asia, and a lot of Americans didn't realize that happened. I tell my friends and many of our graduates that Asia at that time was like the United States in 1929. People were literally jumping off bridges and killing themselves, and people lost everything. It was just horrendous, and it was a whole region.
Yeah.
That was the only time that I had a learning experience around finances, and I was literally on my knees. And the one thing that I learned at that time was that I never knew that it wasn't about the money, but it was about the precessional effect of not having the money, which was the shame, the guilt, the making myself wrong. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have not realized? Why didn't I notice the taps, what Buckminster Fuller called the taps on your shoulder, that there's a Mack truck coming down the road that is, if you don't smell the fuel and if you don't watch for the taps, you really are going to make a big mistake. Yeah. And so all of that was tangled up. And what I had to do, people like Tony Robbins are my friends. I called them up. I called up Sam Georges, that used to be, he's retired now, Tony's boss. I said, I need help. I just need to get into an environment where I can just re-empower myself. I need to go back to my Money and New Graduate, started doing magnificent work. So I went back to working on myself, because that was the only place where I could start from. And then, of course, it took me a few years. I paid a lot of people back and did all kinds of things, and then within 3 years, 4 years, I was back on my feet and did 10,000 times better than I ever had before, and I had done really well before. So what is your experience on how these principles affect money?
Well, it really piggyback on what you said too. I too have been on that roller coaster ride too, and for me, I've always shared in my programs that basically money is kind of the barometer. It is like a report card of how you're doing. The problem that I see though is people sometimes try to fix the condition before they go inside and see what caused the condition. And so, it's very difficult. I don't think that suffering is an effect of what's going on outside of you. Suffering is our perception of what's going on outside of you. I did pretty much what you did. I mean, I've had some times where when healthcare industry is going up and down like that, we had to scramble. When I opened up my offices just right after I met you in San Diego, the big crash hit in 1980, the recession, and there we were. It allowed us, because of the principles we did through cooperation, to get smart really quick. Also, the other part is, it's like the saying, when you're going to go out in the desert and worship God, tie up your camel first. We're in the world, and we're also not of the world. You've got to do both. You got to sometimes get up. I do meditate every day, but you got to get up and take action. I did the same thing. I found masters. It had two things. I found masters that were better at doing what I was doing, with cash flow, with planning, with accumulating capital. I knew what I didn't know, and I made sure though that they had the right intention. Again, they were into watering the tree, of adding value. So I knew that the information they would give me would be the right kind of information, if that makes sense. So I did, and I learned quickly. And I tell you, sometimes adversity gets you smart really quick, as you know. So I found masters in that area, again, because a processional effect of being in front of a lot of very good entrepreneurs when I was teaching, it put me in touch with a lot of people who are also doing the right thing. And so I learned a lot from them. I learned to ask the right questions. And the other part of it is, though, is I always went back, just like you did. I looked inside at the prosperity consciousness. What was going on with me? What shifted in my mind that I might have been a little unconscious about? Oh, what was this fear that I just felt? I would address that. And again, what I tend to do, and I always advise this to anybody I've ever taught, is take time for self. Stop for a moment. Really stop for a moment. And I don't mean just if you could take 10 minutes, that's fine. I would go away for a day. I would really look at what information is happening in my world. And then I would then go right back. How can I apply that to one of the principles that Bucky offered us? And that was always my life preserver, always my way of going back up. And I realized that for me, in the final part of this, is that if there was resistance anywhere in my consciousness, it showed up outside. starting with cash flow, starting with my relationships. And so I would have to go back. I mean, they've said it for thousands of years, you must go within. And that was the answer. If I could tell anybody out there, that's the first step.
So, so one of the things that I recommend to people to take 3.5 days and come and attend Money and You.
Yes.
Because even though you are surrounded by people, you will be in a room with, you know, once you count the staff and the graduates that come along. Money and You in Southern California has anywhere between 60 and 80 people when you count all the different people, because everyone, there's the participants, then there's the logistics team that's supporting, then of course there is the instructor, the program director, the logistics supervisor, and myself and some of the other instructors in training. And then we have the graduates that have the right to come back to Money and You for life, and they come back and they can review part of it or the whole thing in the back. And so what happens is that everyone in that room has the intention of clearing something, of clearing the blocks, of building their deservability level. And it is so powerful. There is there's a whole science on a thing called M-Fields.
Yes.
And so the M-Fields gives people an opportunity to be able to really, they're like almost vibrating at the same rate, if we may call it that.
Yes.
And then what happens is that this intention for people to get very clear, and you're going inside, and we don't have at the breaks, we don't have, you know, like videos going on selling people stuff or talking of future pacing them. We actually ask people to connect with each other, to be networking, to be talking to each other. Sometimes we even give them that assignment, go and meet with your groups, so that you have an opportunity to really debrief what's going on with you and then keep going deeper and deeper. So Money and You is like a big picture. We are painting different parts as the program goes on, and then by the end of the 3.5 days, you have the most beautiful painting, and that painting is the painting of your life. It's like, and without judgment, we really empower and teach people to let go of the judgments, because it's really important for you to understand that you are in the process of a human experience. You are going to make a lot of mistakes, which Buckminster Fuller called learning experiences.
Yes.
You're going to be going through these processes that were designed for you to learn as a human being how to become a better human being. So once you begin to really integrate that and clear the blocks, then your whole life begins to shift. And that's why we ask people at Money and You not to make any major decisions for 7 days, because there is such a clarity that comes up. But then you have to integrate that with your life, with your people, with your team, with your spouses, with your children, and with others, because there's a shift that occurs. And that's why Money and You, mostly the people around the world come from referrals. Because if your friend tells you, go do this program, please listen to them. And something really interesting happens too. I have a very wonderful young man that really wanted to come and do Money and You. He's really committed. He's going solo in his company. He works for his family. Now he's going to go solo. He was really, really committed to coming to the program, and then something came up. And this thing that comes up is almost like they attract.
Yes.
They're like getting so clear that they are going to start having the life of their dreams. They're going to get the tools to really build their businesses. They're going to clear those blocks to their deservability to go much higher, so they can let more money come in, more love come in, more health, more wealth. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like the subconscious themselves begins to put blocks to getting there. So if you're really honest, if you're watching this, just remember any time that you have decided to do something big, immediately things kind of show up to kind of like a block. And then you can say, well, this is happening from outside of me, or you can say, it's interesting, I may be attracting that.
Absolutely.
And these are the distinctions that you learn in Money and You. So talk a little bit about that for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Jeff, in your life?
I'm jumping out of my seat as you're talking because several things happen before, during, and immediately after the program. You know, and what you just said too is that as you ask for what you want in the world, it usually comes as a result of what you don't want. You know, it's really clear, and we tend to focus what we don't want, and there, because we are vibrational beings, and Bucky will support that, you will attract what you're focusing on. What I got from Money and You was to focus on, that's the barometer to what I do want. And the minute I started to ask for it, wow, are you right on, DC, because everything started to show up. However, if you understand that you don't learn less, these are actually, you start to perceive them as gifts coming forward. I call it sitting on a hot stove. What I used to put up with, say at a level of 5 before I jump off the stove and take some positive action in my life, after Money and You, it was like 0.5. You know, you just don't tolerate certain things anymore, and you can learn to do it in a way that adds value, not harm. So you're a mentor to someone, not a tormentor to someone, if that makes sense.
Wow.
That happened just before Money and You. During Money and You, I want to talk about the staff and how the business is run. Never before, and I've done a lot of programs in healthcare, a lot of programs for human potential movements and advancements of things like that. However, with Money and You, what I got to realize was that the integrity of how the program was put on, the business that supported it, mirrored what the message was. And that was so impressive. It was a model. You said M fields. Sheldrake's material or morphogenetic fields is essentially nothing more than the frequency, the vibration. Is that you're down in San Diego, I'm in Washington, but there is something that connects us that we can feel. You can feel that. Money You taught me to not just feel it, but listen to the message and move in the right direction. And the 7 days you talk about afterwards, I mean, that was going on back then. That was one of the greatest gifts you guys gave me, because it was during that time that I respected the gradient of the consciousness that I was going back to, namely my organization. And it allowed me the time to look inside. It allowed me the time to take 2 days up in Mount Shasta to really have conversations with myself that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for the grace of that time. And since then, because of that particular recommendation at the end of Money and You, I do that routinely every year. I highly recommend that you take time for yourself. You know, we call it to our managers to become general enough in what you do to rise above and look down, starting with how you are operating in the environment that you're intending to manage. Are you reflecting what it is that is our mission and our vision? And if you need a guidance system, the principles that Bucky has offered us in the world are those signposts. And finally, you know, when you're walking down a path and there's sticker bushes on either side, and you go to that or you get off path, you don't sit there and curse the stickers. The stickers and that pain, what I learned from Money and You was that it's nothing but a message to go back on the path. That was it. So yes, you know, that's why I immediately sent, you know, my top people to Money and You. I did that for the next 2 years. It was a very fast way to getting on board, getting on an aligned team, which is extremely important for cooperation. And it's also key to me leveraging myself, because my manager's agreement with me, if you're going to be a manager, you must duplicate yourself and replace yourself with someone who knows your job better than you.
Yes, I really want to recommend to everyone, go to moneyandyou.com /rules of the game video, and that you'll have an opportunity to be able to see for 35 minutes, Domingo and I went through one of the key teachings in Money and You is about rules of the game. And a lot of what Dr. Jeff is referring right now are the policies and rules of the game that he created with his team, with his staff, and so that they were going in the same direction and they were going to reach the same goals. So, you know, there's a lot of my commitment is to really bring in a lot of these distinctions and entrepreneurial education to the world more than ever, and to bring you people like Dr. Jeff Alexander, who has put this principle to work, and 35 years later he can speak about it, and then he can also, it's not only about the bottom line, which he has created tremendous financial success, then has had some learnings, and then you create the financial success again. And, you know, I don't have a roller coaster. I only went through once. I'm more of a girl. Men have a tendency to go through more roller coasters. This is not something that I made up, but we are more of nesters. The female aspect of us is more of a mother, and we care about the children and the house and everything, so we don't take as many chances as men do, which is it's really, in many ways, more men are attached to the drama hook than women are, and these are the distinctions that you'll learn in the Money and You program. And if you go to moneyandyou.com, you will also find that there is a 4-session business makeover, which I highly recommend that you download and listen to that, because the first one is by our instructor, the first one is by Maria Simone, where she's talking about the CEO, being the CEO of your life. She's a great Money and You graduate. And then the second one is by one of our leading instructors, and that's Dominic Leone, whose company, he trades what they call trading in Australia, $115 million a year in office supplies. And he's talking about the effect that these programs had in him too. And then we have Lee Brower that's talking about money, and then I'm sharing about the Money and You program and the different distinctions and how to apply it today. So when you come in with us, we are a portal for you. And we're not only a portal for you to make money and have a great, profitable business, but also a business and a team that will add value to humanity, because we're very, very clear that we are flying through the universe at 265 miles per hour in a thing called Spaceship Earth. And we can have one side of the ship have a big hole and have the little spaceship work really, really well. And because of technology, because of many different things, we have become smaller and smaller on the planet. And it is now, when we were talking about these principles 35 years ago, people used to be called hippies for that. And the hippies grew up, and they grew up to having a lot of money. You know, Steven Spielberg could have been considered one. You know, some of the big actors and directors and people, Angelina Jolie definitely would have been a hippie. And now it is time. The time is here for socially responsible businesses and organizations that can change the world. Governments and politicians are not going to change the world. Even in China, what has occurred there has been the encouragement of government to have successful businesses that must share the wealth. And it was because of that that over 700 million people have been taken out of poverty since 1992. So it wasn't like the Chinese government made these decrees that they were going to eradicate poverty because of government decrees. It actually was the encouragement of business people. In many ways, they're great capitalists. It is an amazing, what is the word, dichotomy that happens in that country. So it is up to business people and entrepreneurs to change the world. And this is what Dr. Jeff Alexander is talking about. So he's talking about systems that we put in place to build organizations and also to work within. And I'm going to have him share very quickly, we just have a few more minutes left, about a program that he does, you know, and it's warriorspirit.com. And tell us a little bit how you came about with that work out of you becoming a very successful dental, you know, children dentistry master. Tell us what happened.
Sure, be happy to. And I'm just going to have to, you know, really refer back to my experience of meeting you and meeting your organization and Money and You and Bucky and Accelerated School. That has always been what I call my home base. I've never left it. It's always been there. I mean, here we are. You know, it's always been my launching pad. And when I moved to Washington, I was asked by the police chief up here to put together programs that had to do with what I call the inner management. You know, I never left the business world, because how can you manage 10,000 employees if you can't manage yourself? And that's what I call inner management. So many times I saw that what happened is that whether it is victims of crime that attract victimizers to victims, or whether it happens within our own businesses, we become victims in our own business, is this inner management is what I wanted to focus on. And that was the birth of Warrior Spirit. Is most people view confrontation as something to avoid. And confrontation literally comes from the Latin derivative confronte, which means to join with in front of you. It literally means that when you are confronted, whether it's adversity, whether it's a learning experience, we are intended to join with that experience, to find the value from that experience, and then share that, not just with yourself, but with your brothers and sisters on the planet. That is the core of what Warrior Spirit's about. The main program I have is called The Leap of Faith. Again, it's that inner management. It has people go into the darkest place of their life and turn on the lights. You see, when you could view everything around you that you tend to look as negative or frightful or worry about, and see that as an opportunity, to see that as a gift, physiologically, emotionally, mentally, then what happens, the three comes together, is that you have a spiritual breakthrough. I just described Money and You, so to speak, in a way, and the Accelerated School. And I've just done it up here now for the last 25 years through Leap of Faith. And it has been miraculous results. It's taught in the same way, accelerated learning. Experience is the mother of learning. And if you're not teaching through just, you know, not just through speech, but it needs to be colorful, it needs to be vibrant, it needs to be an experience, mentally, emotionally, physically, and then that sinks in and goes deep. So that's the work through Warrior Spirit, and again, it's, you know, it's never left my foundational home, which is Money and You and the work that you are doing, DC. And I want to thank you so much for being such a warrior spirit in what you have done since the day I met you. You know, this woman just is absolutely unstoppable, and I think that's a good name, because I think you're about ready to spend some time with a wonderful group of people called
Yes,
Unstoppable.
I'm getting ready to hook up with a whole group of unstoppables.com.au. We're going to Antarctica, and actually it is a think tank. We're going to the ends of the earth. Well, Buckminster Fuller never would have called it that.
Right.
Which is another area of Spaceship Earth, where it's a little bit colder than in most places, and we are going to be having a think tank of some very innovative entrepreneurs, very successful human beings, on where we're going to be looking at the future first. And it is that kind of networking that when you do the Money and You program, you have access to those people. As a matter of fact, I was introduced to Julio De Lafitte by a Money and You Business School graduate, and that's Jules Noel. And so this is how the network works. We probably have around the world people in just about every profession that you can think of, and we have all of these different masters that you can probably find and work with and learn from them that can accelerate your process. And we use the word accelerated in our technology because we took the accelerated technology to a whole other level. And so we created our own technology, which is really teaching by example, experientially. And I want to invite you to the next Money and You program that is happening near you. When you go to moneyandyou.com, you will see all the different dates, and we have them in Southern California, we have them in Malaysia, because we have also in Cancun, and we have quite a few more in the Chinese world. And it was our destiny for us to have met our Chinese partners that have taken us to a whole other level, because this work is so wanted and needed in countries that are emerging, but they also wanted and needed in very economically developed countries, because sometimes people forget what is the purpose of a human being really, as opposed to just being money-making machines. What Buckminster Fuller used to call, honey-seeking bees, and human beings are money-seeking bees.
Yes.
And so it depends on which direction you're going to make that money, that the precessional effect of your actions will come about. So we want to invite you to join us at the next Money and You that's coming up, wherever it is near the world, in your world. But also what we'd like to do is we'd like to invite you to continue with us. We are going to be sending you information. You can look us up in Facebook. Go to my Facebook, Dame D.C. Cordova. That's my fan page. And I apologize that I can't accept you as my friend anymore. I think I have 10 slots left, and I save those for the different relatives and all Money and You graduates that I find every once in a while. But my fan page, I paste the same thing in there, and you have an opportunity to be able to join me there, like that page, and see all the different graduates in there. And now the way that Facebook has it, if you request to be friends with someone, you automatically become a follower, and you have the opportunity to also be able to see things in there and also share. You can share. You can join in the conversation. And we have a lot of conversations that we do in Money and You and the Accelerated Business School for Entrepreneurs. And the conversation is about when you see the big headline in my Facebook, which is how do we make the world work for 100% of humanity, with the least ecological offense to anyone or anything in the shortest possible time. So when you ask that question, and you ask it in reference to business and how you create wealth for yourself and your family and your community, because wealth spreads out, that's what you want to be asking, because the chances of you having a business that is more profitable, that is going to be longer lasting, is so much greater when you are asking that question when you set up plans. And this is what Dr. Jeff Alexander has been speaking about. So before I go, you have a last few words to respond to that, Jeff.
Well, I could never put in the last few words the gratitude I have for your work, for what you've offered me. The only way that I could really thank you is for me to continue spreading the word, teaching the message, giving more than I receive, and following everything that Bucky and the Money and You has taught about. And you can count on me. I'm a warrior in a beautiful way to make sure that happens. And so it's eternally grateful. And I just want to put out to those of you who are thinking about Money and You, those of you who have already done Money and You, if I would have known, of the hundreds of thousands of dollars I went through my education, that in one weekend, with such a little investment, I could get so much. That is called more with less, let me tell you. And it changed my life, and it's changed the life. And here's the last thing, is that usually a dentist, by the time they hit retirement age, and I don't know what that is, will see in their practice anywhere between 20 to 25,000 patients, and that's a very successful practice. Last month, we hit over 500,000 children that would have not been treated, not been cared for at all if it wasn't for what I learned in this organization. That's taking your attention off of you and onto the world. And now we're seeing the kids of the kids that we saw before. So DC, you got me. I'm back. And God bless you on your adventure. You have a lovely, lovely trip as you go and you connect to the world. The one thing I'll leave you with, my son asked me last night, so what's this DC stand for? What is that DC? So I gave him my interpretation. I said, that stands for she's the divine connection. Okay, she's the divine connector of beautiful angels all over this world that are going to make this world work for everyone. God bless you.
Thank you, Wes. I'm heading back to my homeland. Actually, my name is Doris del Carmen Cordova Machel. Right. That is my full name. And when I came to this country, it was changed into something different. And then ultimately, it ended up being D.C. Cordova. One of the things that I really love, as soon as I hit Chile or China and some of the Asian countries, probably what I love, immediately I get back to my old name, Doris. And Doris this, Doris that. And I am committed, and we are working right now on an audience with El Presidenta of Chile. And her name is Michelle Bachelet. I'm going to put some things up on social media about that. And it's so interesting because as I head to my homeland, I get very emotional. I can feel myself already kind of landing in Chile. We go from Santiago to Punta Arenas, the very tip of South America, and then we're going to take a plane to St. George Island, which then we get into an expedition ship to go through Antarctica. But it's really interesting to watch myself with all the work that I have been doing on myself for nearly 40 years. There is still a part of me that as soon as I begin to hit the roots in my family, and I go back to see my brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles, and I possibly will go visit the grave of my ancestors, immediately there is a little fluttering in my heart. And it's fascinating because we are all being run by our ancestors, by the legacy that they left behind, by the legacy that we're leaving for others, by the work that we do, and it's almost like a measurement of how well I am doing. What was my life like 5 years ago? What was my life like 10 years ago? And when I last saw my father, quite a few years ago, who is no longer with us. And it is that reality that we all live with every single day. There's only one person, and that's you, that's living within you, watching you, and having all these different reactions. So make it good. Make it really, really good.
Yes.
And Money and You will support you in the highest level for you to live the life of your dreams and for you to be able to really connect to that part of you that is the internal GPS that will always take you to what is best for you, your family, the community, and what you were meant to do in this world. When we're really in our heads and we think that it's going to be only money or position or certain career or certain acts that are going to get you there, that's when it gets a little bit crazy. And ultimately, the world is now going in the direction that doing good is really, really hip, if I may use a word from the 60s. Yeah. And it's the right thing to do. It has always been, but now there is millions and millions and millions of people in networking events, even social media, even the guy that, created Facebook, they're all about doing good. The greatest, wealthiest mind here in the United States are really committed to the uplifting of humanity's consciousness by sharing their wealth. So thank you, everyone. I wish you tremendous success. Come and join us. And Jeff, aloha nui loa. We love you madly. Thank you for having demonstrated our principles.
Love you too. Have a wonderful trip.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and share this message with everyone. Bye-bye.